So to use a really old cliche, it's that moment we've all been waiting for. Yes, this is that very moment, the grand finale of the Mindwars Mumbai Debate Championship 2021 in association with the Indian Schools Debating Society. And we have two finalists. Our judges are still with us, and we're all set for this final, which I'm sure is going to be very, very exciting, because the subject is something that is hotly debated on every news channel, in every society, in everywhere actually, okay? And this is what the topic is, and then I will introduce you to the two debaters. The topic for the grand finale, for the final, is religious leaders should not participate in politics. That is, they should not be endorsing political candidates, position, or running for elections. In a deeply religious country like ours, this is a subject that has raised a lot of eyebrows, and I'm hoping that today is going to raise a lot of points. So on that note, let me introduce the two finalists for today. From the Thane zone, we have Arvind from the Bombay Scottish School, Powai, who is for the motion. And against the motion from South Mumbai zone is Kaamya of Navy Children's School.
Religion at the core of it is the belief in some greater power looking upon us. Seeing all, knowing all. But it also shapes our daily practices, attire, diet, and many more factors, essentially becoming a part of our identity. Religious leaders are figures of wisdom or knowledge who are well versed in scriptures and the ones who some look up to for guidance. I will not be involving self-proclaimed godmen or fraudsters as a part of my arguments. Politics are the activities associated with the governance of a country or area, especially the debate between parties having power. You must be wondering why I'm writing off definitions from a dictionary, but I feel it is important to know the distinction between all of them, as they should never, ever go along together. I will be elucidating three arguments why in my speech. Firstly, religion is largely linked to faith, while in elections, when choosing the perfect candidate, one must use logic and reasoning. Religious leaders tend to wield a great amount of trust and respect in their communities, and exploiting this faith by emotionally manipulating their masses to either vote for them or a favored candidate for monetary gains or influence is not only lawful but sickening. I don't know if there is a hell, but it is for such people. Secondly, these spiritual leaders, based on their popularity and public acceptance, have a lot of mass following who have blind faith in them, which can be misused to gain an unfair advantage. The most fundamental principle defining credible elections is that they must reflect the free expression of the will of the people and the victory of the most deserving. With the involvement of these leaders who can tilt the scales in anyone's favor just like that, the winner won't be the most deserving but the one with the highest prize, defiling the sanctity of free and fair elections. When a religious leader weighs in on behalf of a candidate, his followers surely assume that the leader believes he is speaking on behalf of God, except there is no evidence that God picks sides in political campaigns. Well, going back to the beginning, how will these leaders convince their followers to vote for them? Promising benefits and privileges to the voters like any other politician, but only to those of their religion. At first sight, this is just bribery. But it will give rise to a much greater problem which will tear apart a diverse country like India from the inside. Each religion's leaders will gather up their followers as supporters, creating political factions differentiated on the basis of religions, not ideologies, which will inevitably lead to the favoring of a particular group and even bitterness between communities, not just shaking but obliterating the cornerstone of our constitution, secularism. People will begin to think of themselves as Hindu or Muslim or Sikh before as Indians and lobby for the benefit of their community instead of considering the betterment and development of the nation, fueling one of the worst social evils ever created by mankind, sectarianism. Before we know it, religious radicalism will be rampant in the political scene, leading our country into ruin or a religious nationwide civil war, whichever comes first. Therefore, these so-called religious leaders should all get out. of the political game and stop endorsing or vouching for political candidates. No milder way to say it. They should use their role as spiritual leaders to minister to their flock, to be a safe refuge for those looking for comfort in a confusing, complex, and sometimes scary world, as people trust them. And that is the most expensive thing in the world. Years to gain, but a few seconds to lose. Thank you.
Democratic countries should allow all adult citizens an equal chance to participate in governance, endorse political candidates of their choice, and stand for political office if they so desire. This is the very basis of democracy. Then how can this right be taken away from certain individuals just based on their religious affirmations? Won't it shake the very foundation of democracy? Would it not amount to dilution of freedom of religion? As opposition, I strongly object the motion and will now state why it is prohibitive and regressive to deny religious leaders from participating in politics through the following arguments. Just like how it is undemocratic to expect people to be represented exclusively by leaders of their own faith, it is also undemocratic to tenet that religious leaders cannot represent those who share their beliefs. Religious leaders do have their sets of beliefs about the world, morality, and God, but they are no different than anyone else. Extremists of every hue represent people in parliaments and legislative assemblies around the world. The most zealous politicians are often believers of political ideologies like communism rather than religions. Chances for misrule and vagaries are equally applicable under believers of such non-religious ideologies. So, religion should not be singularly excluded from the political ambit. If communists can be allowed the opportunity and privilege to govern, why should a man of God be denied the same? On the contrary, their spirituality could make them ideal representatives and counselors for their constituents. Their societal connect and work makes them very familiar with the problems of ordinary citizens, like poverty, injustice, educational issues, etc. Valuable insights for any legislator. Moreover, religious leaders are much less likely than others to be influenced by corruption, which is a major issue in many countries. It is also obvious that religious leaders come bundled with assured leadership abilities and command their followers' loyalty. This would increase their chance of achieving the promised mandate. As for their knowledge and administrative skills, we are discussing real religious leaders, well versed in the most complex preachings, not those fake imposters. In a multicultural society, it is generally opined that the religious leaders entering politics will represent only people from their religion. I strongly disagree. In a thriving secular state like India, it is particularly valuable to have people of faith who are willing to lead as mascots of communal harmony, reach out to engage with others, and work together towards solving problems facing the society. Religious leaders are often portrayed as extreme or staunch believers of their faith. But as Pennsylvania's founder William Penn once said, to be furious in religion is to be furiously irreligious. Therefore, a religious leader who crosses the line of faith to become furious would cease to be religious anymore. And hence, such rotten apples cannot be quoted as examples for them not having the ability to be good politicians. So I would sum that the proposition's motion is flawed in logic and legality. Thank you.
Oh. Yes. Do you want to open up this debate now?
Sure. So number one, I would like to point out that religious followers are different from religious leaders. Religion, you are free, you have the right to religion. However, someone who is a religious leader has a different state from just anyone being a part of that religion or believing in that religion. Also, you may have listened to me in my speech, the dangers of sectarianism and radicalism, which on penetrating the government can lead to some serious consequences. So what do you have to say about that, since these religious leaders, as you mentioned as well, have mass following which often have blind faith? So isn't it a dangerous amount of power vested in them?
So I don't agree with you. It isn't always dangerous to place the seats in the government in the hands of religious leaders, because in the case of any politician, you stated yourself that we vote for them out of logic, but logic is what they give in their manifestos, and it is faith that we put into the leader that leads us to vote for a particular person to take up a particular post. But I think faith of an entire community in one person before they become a politician itself shows that that person is worthy of doing some work and is already worthy of recognition. But we can make sure and ensure in this case that the politician will come through with his promises, because he feels that he has a responsibility to his people, to his community, and I might even go as far to say to God. And they are more, religious leaders are more honest in coming through with their promises.
So I have numerous aspects in a part of my follow-up question. So you keep saying that they have a responsibility to their community. Now, which is their community? Their religion or the entire country? Because they are religious leaders. A Hindu spiritual leader is not going to prioritize the benefits and the well-being of Muslims, because it's not a part of his job description. Also, why do you say that religious leaders are immune to corruption? Is there any statistic stating that they are honest, that they are reliable? Because I don't think so.
My main point to you is that why would anyone choose to become a religious leader if they do not believe in God? And if they believe in God, why do you think they would not be honest to their cause and what they have promised to a particular group of people? And coming to your first question of whether they will serve only the community belonging to their religion, I don't think so, because they are religious leaders first, obviously, but once they become politicians, the entire country or the state or any group that they are serving becomes their first priority. So their first priority will always be doing something that benefits the entire nation or an entire group. But them being religious leaders of one particular religion is only ensuring that all the people of that religion will be in alliance with good initiatives that the government might take, which will also stop a lot of political riots which happen for motions that the people don't really understand but still go against for the mere heck of it.
Okay. Would you like to rebut?
Yes. So I just want to ask you, were Hitler and Joseph Stalin religious leaders? No. Yet they caused the deadliest war and the worst of atrocities. On the other hand, would you rate Yogi Adityanath, a perceived religious leader and ineffective politician? He recently presented UP's largest ever budget of rupees 5.5 lakh crores and is now working to make the state a $1 trillion economy. Why should we then stereotype and alienate one entire class of people from politics rather than just weed out the actual troublemakers and the non-performers? Is this not what democracy is supposed to naturally do at the end of every single term?
I never mentioned that non-religious leaders or neutral politician are less susceptible to corruption or radicalization. I just said that religious leaders entering into politics are more susceptible to cause radicalization because of the group they have been leading for the period of their leadership. Also, you said that Yogi Adityanath is a very effective politician. Under him, UP has faced increasing rates of rape. Women's safety is compromised, the worst literacy rate, and it's one of the worst it is the worst governed state in India as of now, according to various the census which was reported this year. So, do you still believe that he is an effective leader?
Okay, I have a follow-up question which I'd like to ask. You're stating that only religious leaders are not the one doing mistakes, and you accept that. Why then do you feel it is necessary for us only to remove religious leaders? Also, the second part of my question, the Indian Constitution says that every single citizen is entitled a chance to stand up for elections, and going through with the motion would strip them of their fundamental right. So what do you have to say about that?
Number one, I don't think you know what you're referring to as a fundamental right, because definitely standing for elections is not a fundamental right in its true sense. It is not one of the fundamental rights like right to speech or right to education. Also, I did not mention that that religious leaders are just as susceptible as anyone else. I said that they are more susceptible. As I said, right to standing in elections is not a fundamental right, but it is a right which all the citizens of India should be provided. However, there is another fundamental aspect, the cornerstone of our constitution, which will be threatened by allowing religious leaders to enter politics, national politics, which, as I mentioned, is secularism. We can't ensure or mention by any hard facts or statistics that these religious leaders won't favor their religion. And that will lead, as I said, to sectarianism, to radicalization, to bitterness between the communities, and could lead to a civil war. And I think secularism, which is basically a cornerstone of our constitution and even mentioned in the preamble, should be the first priority over the right of all citizens to stand for elections, because we are trying to prevent a national catastrophe from happening. So I think we need to prioritize.
Great. I think both of you all have spoken well, and I'm sure the judges want to test you further. And so, Varshini, Dhruva, Tiska.
My question is to you, Arvind, and I have two questions. So the first question I have is, people vote on the basis of their values, and people's values are often fundamentally intertwined with religion. And there are some issues that are inextricable from religion. So if you think about abortion in the US or vegetarianism in India, why is it wrong for someone to go to their local priest or their local vicar and ask them for their advice or support on how to think through these positions and what they would suggest that they do if they were in their shoes?
As I think I was going to mention it in my ending statements, is that spiritual leaders and politicians are both important. They both serve their purposes. A spiritual leader is meant to guide his people of his community through the hardships of this confusing and hard world. And as an advisory body, it is very, very helpful. However, putting him in an administrative position in charge of various other communities, in the case of India...
I'm going to stop you there. So, setting aside the question of religious leaders actually running for politics, this is about the other part of the motion, which is religious leaders taking positions on political topics. So, I am someone who's going through hardships. One of the hardships that I'm facing is, do I vote for abortion or against abortion? Why should I not be able to consult my local priest or vicar and for them to be banned from sharing their opinions on the subject with me?
One can share their opinion about a subject, about a particular subject for or against it, but endorsing a particular candidate or a particular party in specific is biased. And this form of bias could be induced by bribes or corruption, and that is inhibiting the free and fair elections, preventing them from happening. And a lot of people have blind faith in their leaders. So even if they may not be presenting a valid point for or against abortion, it will sway the masses in favor or against a particular party without any actual logic and reason behind it.
You seem to be drawing a very tricky line there. So if there's two politicians running in an election, one is for abortion, one is against abortion, and my local priest says, you should not vote for abortion or abortion is wrong, isn't that then automatically a political statement in favor of a candidate? And if so, should my local priest not be talking about abortion and social issues at all?
I think it is more of addressing the social issue per se, and not a particular party or candidate. And if a particular party happens to be exclusively in support for abortion or against abortion, then it is not lawful, according to this the motion, for this religious leader to speak about these social issues. It's completely in his way. Only endorsing and specifically supporting a particular candidate or party with a bias is wrong, according to this motion, and that's what I argue for. Social issues can definitely be discussed in religious forums as well.
Hi, Kaamya.
Hi.
Okay, my question to you is, you spoke about fake godmen and real godmen. Once you open the gates, how do you define fake and real, and who becomes, what is the sieve through which you pass the godmen?
Okay. So, according to me, this is my personal view, fake godmen would be those people who are using religion as a tool to instill fear of certain ideologies in people that follow them, which can be detrimental and dangerous to the lives and choices of those people in their lives. Whereas real people of God would be those who are using religion to educate people on their life choices, but not force them or, put them under put them under social pressure to do something, saying that, okay, you don't do this, this is a really bad thing that's going to happen to you. So that is something I would put under something a fake person would do, whereas a real godman would tell someone, okay, you can do this or you can do this, but I feel for your life, it would be better if you chose option B.
You can tell whether there's a Gucci handbag that's real or not, because either it's made by the Gucci factory or it's not. Fake or real in human beings is extremely hard to define, I would imagine. My question, however, was how do you segregate or how do you separate who will step into public office or not? What is the method by which somebody makes the fake list and who makes the real list? And at which point will this happen? When the election commission decides who will get a ticket, seat, etc., whatever. How does that happen? How do you propose that would logistically happen?
I think the election commission, when giving a seat to a particular candidate who happens to be a religious leader, should look more into their propaganda and how, whatever their propaganda is, how they want to put it into the society, how they want to ensure that people follow whatever they are saying. So I think the method that they use to complete whatever promises they make to the public is what would show us the difference. And
we've seen in years and years and years of democracy that pre-election propaganda is completely different from what deliverables are, and to hold somebody to their promise is something that we've never succeeded in all our years. People have made the wildest promises. My question, however, still remains that is it left to the discretion of the election commission then to decide that which is a fake godman and what is a real godman, and does that in the quagmire that politics is, does that not open a can of worms for a complete corruption to the next level?
So obviously corruption will be there even with religious people in politics or without them, because politics itself is it is a profession which is giving way to corruption as a field. So I don't think religious people being or not being a part of corruption is going to being part of politics is going to give way to corruption at a large scale. However, after the election commission gives a seat to a candidate, I think it is up to people and us as citizens to see for ourselves what the person promises and to make a logical choice.
Kaamya, as an extension of that question, once you do put a religious leader in power, so we've established to some extent it's already difficult to be able to figure out who is a genuine religious leader and who is a fake godman, so to speak. But regardless of which one is in power, if you are to have a debate, and right now you're having this debate, you're using reasons and logic to deconstruct each other's arguments. If you walked up to a pundit or a priest and asked them what their position is on anything, and they were to say, you've got to do X because that is what God said, what is a reasonable way to argue out of that position?
Okay, so your question was how do we argue with someone who tells us to perform a particular act because God told us to? Well, like I said, instilling fear into people is no right way to get a job done. And I think in such a situation, it would only make sense if you ask the priest telling you to do job X because God told you to do so. Ask them for logic. Ask them how doing that particular activity will affect your future, why it will affect your future, and just tell them, ask them to tell you why we should do that activity, apart from the fact that God telling us. Ask them why God is telling you to do that activity. I hope that answers the question.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a fantastic day. We've listened to some wonderful people and we've finally come to this stage, which is the finals. All that is left to decide is who is going to be Mumbai's best debater. And that answer is just moments away. Now we wait with bated breath as the judges deliberate on this very important decision. Who is going to be Mumbai's best debater? Or as Mr. Bachchan would say, Kaun banega Mumbai ka best debater? And we have a result over here.
So, I
yes,
think
ladies and gentlemen, we'd like all three judges to come onto stage before we announce the winner of the grand finale of the Mindwars Mumbai Debate Championship 2021. So the judges have all assembled on the stage right next to these glittering trophies, and everybody is, as they say, utsukt to know the winners. So Tiska, shall we start with the first runner-up?
Absolutely, we shall. It has been absolutely unbelievably difficult for the three of us to judge. So we set it to vote. And with a 2:1 tilt, we have finally come up to the decision that the first runner-up is Kaamya, who opposes the motion.
And a big, big hand for Kaamya. Kaamya, you've done really well.
And the winner of Mumbai'S, or rather the champion debater of Mumbai is Arvind.
Yes, the winner, champion debater, Mumbai, Arvind, Bombay Scottish School, Powai, from the Thane zone. First runner-up, Kaamya, from Navy Children's School, South Mumbai. Congratulations, Arvind and Kaamya. Great battle, well fought. Big hand of applause to both our lovely participants. So I'm requesting the judges to please remain on stage because we've got more prizes to give out. We've got glittering trophies right over here. These are the prizes for the winners and the runners-up in the various zones. So let's start with the runner-up and winners of the North Zone. In the North Zone, the first runner-up was Aditya Jain. Come on, run. And the winner of the North Zone, Kanishka Chawla. Big round of applause. Now coming to the South Zone, the runner-up of the South Zone, Kaamya Karthikeyan again. And the winner of the South Zone, Anuja Randeri. From the South Zone, let's go to Thane. And the runner-up in Thane was Arvind Iyengar. And the winner in Thane, Prathamesh Somwanshi. From Thane straight to Navi Mumbai. And the winner at Navi Mumbai is Sania Chaudhary. And we have a special mention, a special recognition, a jury special, or whatever you may call it, for great work done, coming in at the last moment and holding fort. That's from the North Zone, Laisha Dogra. And that brings us to the end of the grand finale of the Mindwars Mumbai Debate Championship 2021 in association with the Indian Schools Debating Society. I hope you guys have had a great time watching this show as I have had moderating it. So, see you next time in the next edition of the Mindwars Mumbai Debate Championships, association with Indian Schools Debating Society. Thank you very much. Have a good day.